Welcome to our continuing conversations with Joe Visconti. Welcome, Joe.
Glad to be here. Back again.
Well, last time you had three good questions, and they were kind of focused on evil. We kind of tackled the first question, but we didn't quite get to the second and third. So today I thought that not only would we, again, reiterate the antidote to all this evil, but that we describe some evil that Rudolf Steiner was the first to point out, basically, that the World Wide Web would exist, how it would exist, and what it would do to humanity. So we pulled together a little study guide, and you'll find that in the below this video. And you read it and you already know these things anyway. So I thought that we would pick up wherever you wanted, but in the end, make sure that we give people the antidote.
Yeah, that was a great antidote. Spread out through many lectures, and there's so many more about what we're going to address here, and the times we're living in. And I don't want to say politically, but it seems like every time we look at the news or look at television, even if it's entertainment, something's coming at us disguised, and it's calling us, it's asking us, it's challenging us. And every week and year and month and day and minute that goes by, there's another level of, oh my God, that we wouldn't have talked about that or seen that a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. More and more being pushed into this threshold of evil, across this threshold to either be repulsed, accept it, shut it off, but we can't turn anywhere. It's in our time, it's saturating us. And even if we don't watch it, people around us are carrying these thoughts. And what we speak about them as we say they're evil. And that sounds like such an old evil from the Catholic Church and good. But what actually is happening with the actions of men that seem to be and appear to be not helpful, um, addictive, repulsive, and yet my mind goes directly to something Rudolf Steiner says every time I confront it. And this is his statement: the greatest threat to humanity in the next several hundred years will be the love of evil. The love, or the heart chakra, loves it. The fetishes, the trauma, masochism, sadism, whether it's hurting yourself or someone else, feeling the pain, master's joy, every sick, twisted thing that ever was becoming holy and glamorized. And so the love of evil is really where I think everything needs to start, because not to judge anyone, but what we used to call evil, or things that were sinful, or things that were earthbound, that would bring you into earthiness, and I would say addiction, because you have to do it again and again and again, and you're driven and addicted to these actions. And the more you do them, the more depraved they need to become. As Michael Savage used to say on his radio show, the men cannot get excited, or women, and can't become sexually aroused unless another deviant thing happens, and then a worse deviant thing happens. So we're dealing with parts of our, what science would, Freud would probably call instinct and whatever, but it really is addictive, in juxtaposition to holiness and goodness and helpfulness and lightheartedness and caring and truly helping people with their troubles, their anxieties, their problems, family members, whatever. And both of these seem, you don't get addicted that way when you're doing good things. So rather than things that we call evil, really, what is this addictiveness to deviant, and now to the point where we can see this with this new fashion industry. I won't mention their name, begins with a B. How the bloody children and the bloody socks, and holding children in bondage, and children, and forcing against their will to do evil actions, or at least to portray that that happened with bloody sneakers that they're selling. How far are we descending to the pit? And would you, if you were an atheist and a devil worshiper, what would you call that? If you were a Satanist, what would you call that? And if you don't want to believe in God and Satan, what would you call that? That's something that's promoting harmfulness and hurt and pain and addiction and especially to the youth who don't have the critical faculty yet to distinguish whether they want to do some sexual act out of the experiment of a consenting adult versus the instinct or the trauma that reoccurs over and over where the free will is not taken. And so as we go into the things we're going to talk about, looking at it that way, the way I'm describing, versus Catholic God, Satan, goodness. Just look at the addiction. Look at the holiness and the goodness, or the simple caring, as two polar things, and why, as Rudolf Steiner would say, we are now faced with this dilemma that the love of evil will be our challenge.
So true. And we can go into great detail. When you were speaking, I thought of John Podesta. He staffed the White House administration, 3 different administrations, and he's one of the most vile people on the face of the earth. And now he's rising to power again as if nothing ever happened. This started back in 1840, according to the selections of we put below from Rudolf Steiner, when materialism started to get such a foothold that people believed the only thing real was the material world. Well, that's just a pathetic starvation of people who need to contact the hierarchy. They need to contact the beings who are above us, who are always there to serve us. And so we can see evil so clearly today, but if we trace the way that it happened, it's pretty clear that science became a religion, and they claim that they're not a religion. They have abnegated all other religions, and now they believe God is dead, Jesus is fake news, so on and so forth. And that if you believe anything different than what the TV tells you, the mainstream media, then you are considered mentally ill. Now, this was all predicted by Rudolf Steiner. And if we look at how this happens, it's very simple. We have a physical body, an etheric body, an astral body, and an ego, an I am. And the I am is sacred, and it's supposed to be a template of Christ, who works from well, you could call it the mother lodge of the sun, as he calls it in these selections below. And from that realm, we are given this sacred divine trust. And unfortunately, because we are now almost 200 years into the religion of materialism, which only believes in the 5 senses, doesn't believe in life before birth or life after death, and no scientist is going to tell you that they have ever encountered their own guardian angel, an archangel, Christ. No, they have no connection with this. And so the I is then ripped to pieces by beings called Asuric beings, and they are trying to eat the ego of human individuals and give it over to the Antichrist, the demon of the sun, we'll call him, Sorat. And this is happening in our age so fast that it looks as if we may accelerate human evolution by 6,000 years, and we could have the war of all against all right now. Why? Because even the human ego, the human I am, is put at odds with itself. And the way this happens is we live in the depredation of the ego in America. Any kind of twisted up, as you just pointed out, evil thought, evil action, evil feeling. Oh, it's on the front page of the news. It's touted as the new golden calf. It's the new idol. It's who we should be following. Whoever is the most perverted person. So that is the perversion of the astral body. Rudolf Steiner spoke about that. Now, everyone knows what that amounts to. If you don't tame the dragon in yourself, you become that dragon. And it's real simple. If you don't understand that, then you probably are so ensconced in materialism that you will never, ever contact your guardian angel.
Well, don't lose that thought because you're moving into the etheric body, but I would love to put something in here right here. The evil actions, evil can only be committed when there's consciousness, when the I am is present. Otherwise, it's sin, it's error, it's mistake, but it's not. They call it evil intentions. It is these intentions and the awareness and a wakefulness of the ego witnessing these lower gods in a descension back to the reptile, back to these times when the retrograde powers are at work, pulling mankind, trying to steal pieces of his soul. And not just, before you go on to the etheric, not just to pull man down, but to take fragments of his being and build another sphere with their soul. with soul elements, and I'll continue here with the eighth sphere. What they are trying to build with our body parts is similar to the aborted fetuses, human beings, that they're taking and selling body parts, and they are actually legally doing this to Planned Parenthood, which Project Veritas proved in California. And so they're doing something with parts that they're taking. They're just not looking to destroy, but to harness and to reutilize in their own image the things that they want.
So true, so true. And as we fall into the astral body, well, we descended from heaven very slowly. The animals came down here first, and they were perfected so that when we, the pinnacle of what the animal kingdom has been able to create for us as a basis of our physical body, we're supposed to be above all of that. But unfortunately, since 1840, we've been falling back into animalness. And when we do, we fall into dreams. So when we have these dreams that we want to be the king of the world, the ruler of the universe, we want to have as many sex partners as possible, have as much money as possible, have as many houses. That is the desire of an animal, and it isn't a conscious desire, as you just pointed out. And the aberrations of the astral body create aberrations of violence, sex, and psychosis and neurosis. Well, Rudolf Steiner pointed out that if we fall from the human into the lower kingdoms of the animal, the plant, and the mineral, we will go into total chaos. And so that's what happens with the astral body. How many people are happy to say in America, I am stretching my astral body to the limits that include all animals. I'm all animals at once. There are people who literally change their face to look like animals, and now they're born with the look of animals on their face. And you don't have to look too hard to see that certain people, as soon as you see their face, you know that they're living in that animal existence.
Well, Rudolf Steiner also states something very important with the materialism you're speaking about, the multiple houses. The unconscious desire for the spiritual world is within mankind. We've crossed the threshold, and it's everyone has it. But if they don't farm it, develop it, seek interest in it, they will look to acquire material as a counterforce for the repression of the spirit that they are not going to. So they turn around and are looking for more. That quantity of more would be given to them in spiritual thinking, in discovery of more of reality. And if that doesn't happen, then need more coats, more shoes, more cars, more whatever. That moreness is because of the spirit descending so powerfully and the rejection of man to wake up to it. The activity doesn't grow, it's stunted. It's like weeds. They don't grow up, they grow lateral.
So true, so true. And essentially, if you do not have a conscious I am, you're not going to be able to communicate with your guardian angel. Okay, let's just go step one. And your guardian angel will be found where? In your astral body. So when you have tuned yourself to being more of an angel than an animal, you will start to communicate with your guardian angel. It will appear as your conscience telling you when you've done something wrong. The conscience today, I would say the majority of Americans don't have a conscience. They don't know a conscience exists, and they have no idea where it came from or what it's supposed to be. So they are basically wallowing around like a pig in the mud and thinking that they're just as happy as can be because they're in their comfort zone. It is unbelievable. It's an unconsciousness that is really unimaginable for an evolving humanity. Now, if we go into the etheric realm, we go even deeper. We're not in sleep. We're not in dream. We are now in dreamless sleep because the plants basically worship the sun. That's all they do. And because they do, and they're so singular, they do a marvelous job of it. What do we do when we go into that realm? We're in dreamless sleep. We don't do anything. We go unconscious. So imagine if you are feeding the fire of your animal desires, and now you've gone totally asleep and you've just let those habits take over your life. Rudolf Steiner says pure chaos will result in our social world. And essentially, as we go into the plant world, we're supposed to be reaching higher into the realm of the archangels, the realm of, for instance, animals have a group soul. We don't. We came out of a group soul. We came out of our being limited by our tribe, by our nation, by our race. none of that applies anymore. We're free beings. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're born, what you believe, what religion you follow, has nothing to do with it. It's whether or not you can have a conscious experience of the temple of God that has been given to you as your body. So if you knew what the astral body was, then you would be able to contact not only your guardian angel and angels, you'd be able to contact the stars and the beings in the zodiac that ray down to us. And that is imprinted into your etheric body, but it's in a dreamless sleep state. We are fairly
Enchanted,
unconscious of it.
enchanted. It's
It is
enchanted.
enchanted. Absolutely. And
And
our job is to disenchant our perceptions so that we can see the spirit behind physical matter.
now you posted something that you put underneath the video here, you're going to, that I read earlier, and it's on the Supermen. And in it was amazing what you put together, because it's from excerpts from many different lectures. And there's one thing very important about the Supermen, the men from Venus, Mercury, and Vulcan. And that is also listed there are the men from the sun. The word sun is put in two different places, which led me to think, as I didn't have a lot of time today, looked at it, glanced at it, boy, the spirit was moving in me while I was trying to do my material things in the world. And then I realized that Christ has descended from the hierarchies for 2,000 years and come close. And in one of the articles that you posted, or the lectures, it speaks about where these supermen are between Mercury and how they're moving closer. So as Christ has come, well, he's here. As he's descended and come, they have come also. And it was just fascinating the way you put it together. I definitely have to meditate on some of this and roll it around for a few days to get more out of it. But we've been talking about these men, and I think about them a lot, saying, you know, who are these? These are men. He calls them men. He doesn't say God. One place he may allude to gods, but they're here to bring us this spiritual science, the data that we're speaking about, the information of reality of how we became where we are, all fragmented, but out there nonetheless. And it's a language for us to pick up and be interested to gather. We've mentioned that before. But what struck me today when I saw that all put together was the fact that they're here because we're going to go through this transition to the moons in thousands, 6,000 years or so, when the moon descends back within the earth, and we'll need to choose between which path we're going to take, up to the spirits of light, the sun mysteries higher, or we're going to descend. And there is people always say, make a statement. What do you believe? I believe in the God, the Father Almighty, the maker of heaven and earth. Do you believe? What do you believe? That question is being asked all the time by us. What do you believe? And where do you believe you came from? And who are you? Who are we? And people are not answering it, which is, you're seeing this social chaos. You're seeing the wars and the things that have not yet begun, because technology and drugs have masked it. There's no need to kill anymore the way they did when people, we mentioned this, 47% of the children are taking prescription drugs. The public, between alcohol and illegal drugs and over-the-counter drugs and nervousness, all that is a war. That is the war that is fragmenting our other bodies, versus maybe in a war state in World War II, when it was fear because your loved ones are fighting in a battle somewhere. It's all that the war has come everywhere within each of us. It's not a war that we recognize from past wars, where the cavalry and the tanks and the airplanes, that's an old method. This is a new method, and this is where evil is lying right now, tearing us asunder and apart. And so these men are coming to bring, and people say, well, what does this information do, and why would it help? Help, and what can it do to stop this? It brings two things that Rudolf Steiner says. Strength comes from the hierarchies, and with them comes this information we're speaking about. The hierarchies include these supermen. And security comes from knowing that we come from out of the invisible. That is the most important thing in the time when people think we come out of the dead rock and the Big Bang. When we come out of the invisible, we originate out of a place beyond the five senses. And I wanted to say this. I was with John the other day on a show, and really, if you want to know the spirit, get Rudolf Steiner's book. Buy it. I don't think you can read it online. The 12 senses, and you'll find that all 12 senses make us into a spiritual being. We use the other ones, but we don't recognize them or give them any weight. We only overuse five of them. But if all 12 are used, like in the zodiac, we will become spirit man right in the moment, right here, right now. So there is a healing, a pastoral healing that comes through this information because it makes us 12-fold beings. It makes us whole where now we're fragmented. And these parts of our being that we're not using are unconscious and they're dormant and they're sleeping. They need to be activated because if they are, like the men from Venus, Vulcan, and Mercury, are not acknowledged, if these other seven senses are not acknowledged and activated and worked upon, acknowledged, and wondering about them, those senses will turn on us on five senses. So it is part of what I talked about before. The dark forces are not the only enemy. The rejection of the spirit is also will turn on us. We have no choice but to turn to God. We have no choice but to turn to seeking the unknown, to figure out in our time of the consciousness soul how we came about. We cannot stay lukewarm in the middle. So everyone has to choose, or they are choosing if they don't choose.
You said it so beautifully, and Rudolf Steiner underscores that in the top, selections that we've made for you as a study guide to show that Rudolf Steiner said all of spiritual science comes from contacting these beings. And if you can't contact these beings right now, then you're not a human evolving towards an angel. You are, as we just pointed out, you are degrading, you are devolving into an animal, into a plant, and in your physical body, you're devolving into a mineral. Now, these are some of the most mysterious things Rudolf Steiner ever talked about, and we could talk about this for a very long time because we'll have to speculate a bit about exactly what he meant, calling them superhumans from Venus, Mercury, and Vulcan, or calling them essentially our spirit guides, the people who are the beings who were human at one point, but we don't know exactly what he means by calling them human. But he does clearly state that since 1840, we have entered into the mineral world. And because we believe with science, the religion of science, that the mineral world is all there is. We don't really care about the plant world. We don't care why the plants grow, how they get the levity to grow, how they're connected to the heart of the sun. We don't care about the 12-fold zodiacal influences that become our animals on this face of the earth, that then have risen up to become the paragon of animals, the human being. We are dwelling in the mineral realm. And then this is when it gets really, really insightful and somewhat scary. He says that human beings have fallen down past their astral desires, in their dreaming astral desires, into their dreamless sleep of the plant realm and their etheric body. That's where all the wisdom of the entire cosmos is imprinted. And each of us have that. Each of us have a temple of wisdom in our etheric body. But your etheric body is controlled by your ritual actions. Whatever you do, that is your religion. Whatever you do each day in a rhythmic pattern is what either evolves you or devolves you. But he points out that human beings will, at this time, sink down to being somewhere in their consciousness between plants and minerals. And that through that, and through the effort of basically materialistic science, millions of people will create what he calls the spider web of gray shadow thought. That is the web. That is the World Wide Web. That is the internet. He describes it so clearly. He says that when people no longer can have spiritual thoughts, they're bound by the material world. They're limited to a mineral that is appearing to look as if it has the life of a plant. That's exactly what our phones are. That's what our computers are. That's what the internet is. And what does it do? Well, many of us spend most of our waking life looking at these devices, not looking at human beings, not looking at the world, not trying to figure out how it is that plants do grow. Where did they come from? Where did humans come from? And developing the reverence that we should have in our astral body that gets us a contact with our guardian angel so we can then begin to communicate. What we have is the illusion of, and it's the most horrible ego illusion, human ego illusion, that your digital devices seem to make you omniscient because you can look up anything, omnipotent because you can activate things across the world with your phone with an app, and omnipresent. So basically, you become a god. You become omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. And through that, you basically bit off the bait, hook, line, and sinker to the Luciferic delusion that you deserve to have the phone that does all that work. Millions of people, probably tens of millions of people, had to work to create the phone and the apps that you use, and you don't thank them. You think you deserve it. We all do.
Well,
Because we
I'm going
don't
to thank them right here because while you were talking, I was Googling something on the 12 senses because I'd love to bring, you and I had a conversation today, and the heart of it really was, and I'm a builder also my whole life since I was, before I had cognition, I went to work with my father at 4 or 5 years old, took me to work, Italian Marine. So always it's the experience. This is the key word I want to say today. The word is experience. Very important here. And I'm going to talk about these supermen in a second. I'm going to tie in. And this is all coming for those sitting at home, for all the things we've known for 50 years and studied, Doug and I and John and others, and it starts to work on you exponentially, and you can just delve into something and you'll get an answer. It's so fluid and alive, and you know when it's right. But so I mentioned, because I intuitively felt to mention the 12 senses, but they have to do with something that people can approach. This is where eurythmy comes from. They can approach through experience. So I'll mention what they are. We know 5 of them. So we have touch, life, self-movement, balance, smell, taste, sight, temperature, warmth, hearing, language, thought, and ego, or the sense of the eye. Those are the 12 senses of Rudolf Steiner. You really need to look at them. They fall into constellations, but what they do in a sense of balance, when you're doing eurythmy or dancing, or if not, like Rudolf Steiner says, nature and life can initiate you by your task, by your vocation. You don't need to know everything we're talking about because it will initiate you. This will happen one way or the other, but the sense of balance moves you. And if you just work, I'm moving in my chair a little bit, and the sense of balance, you can get something. The sense of temperature, we all know it's a frigid morning and yet we're so awake, or it's a hot summer day. Every one of these things brings in experience. That's a key word I want to say that's so missing from anthroposophy or all of the hidden mysteries. It is and this is why the Catholic Church, got to give it to them, have the sacraments and the things that we must do. Must have experience, not just words, because a lot of this is heady, and it's kind of like the direction manual. Then you put it down, and then after you put it down, you try to fix the carburetor or whatever that you watched the video on. You're going from direction to YouTube to reality. So the experience of any of this is so important. And in the 12 senses, we actually get something. This is so important, where we move across dimensions. There's a great book put out. I have it here. I don't know who the author is, called, maybe it was Rudolf Steiner, The Fourth Dimension. And so when we start to look at dimensional work, dimensional consciousness, we start to begin the process to understand how these supermen could come out of other dimensional realities. I'm not going to say Devachan or places that are up high, but they will come if you meditate more on how they're bringing it. The important thing is the content of what they're bringing to us is very important. We know things are buried and hidden within us and dormant within us. What are they bringing, like sperm cells that are activating what's within us, our Virgin Sophia? What is spiritual science bringing, like a sperm and an ovum that's coming from them? What, I'm just giving a little reproductive thing here, but why do we need them if it's within us right now? Because it's not activated. They're here to help us activate in a 12-fold manner. In a 12-fold manner in our minds, so that we're using most of these senses unconsciously. We haven't given them the value. but they're here to bring us something that is going to activate within us. We're either going to reject that love, that gift, that activation, but we can't remain neutral, and then the dark forces will take us. By the fact that they're here being rejected, they're sending us right to the dark force. If we reject them, we can't turn neutral, we turn dark. This Rudolf Steiner anthroposophy could be the worst thing in the world if it's not sought after, accepted in whatever form, and with the patience and humility and long suffering of trying to find things. But if it's not followed after you start it, don't try to put good things down once you start them. They'll have a negative effect on you. Rudolf Steiner addresses that, as well as not wanting to receive what. This is why we have to do what we're doing today. We have to put it in the airwaves, in the sub-physical world, everywhere, so people will be able to reject it, and we can condemn them. If they're not going to be, said Moses, if you will not live by the law, you will die by the law. Remember that? If you won't accept it, then we're here to make sure that you go on the path that circumnavigates a satellite around the future Jupiter, which I like to say, because either way, you'll wake up. And that's what the consciousness soul is about. This is the battleground epic right now under the mystery of evil, to put this out. And so few anthroposophists want to put it out. They're afraid. What if I say something wrong? What if it doesn't mean this? What if I don't finish the sentence? What if we get it the minute it is? Just do what you know is right. End of the sermon for a moment here.
Preach it, brother, preach it. What you're saying is so good. I'm so glad you brought up the 12 senses, because all of us can develop the 12 senses. I'll give examples of that in a moment. But also, as you pointed out previously, supersensible organs are needed to have this dialogue with the unseen beings. But we don't have to do that ourselves to begin with, because we've been raised in many generations of pure materialism, worshiping science, when science is the worst mythology, the worst superstition ever created. And as we know, with the Webb telescope, everything that science ever understood about anything beyond our planet has been flushed down the toilet. Now they say that a black hole is simply a wormhole to a white hole. Well, hello, Rudolf Steiner said that a long time ago, and basically it's a child should have been able to figure that out. But we don't, because we're not in contact with nature. We're not in contact with ourselves. We're not in contact with beautiful reverence, awe, and wonder in our astral body. We're not in contact with the incredible gifts of the cosmos imprinted in our etheric body. And we basically abnegate, if not desecrate, the physical body. But the 12 senses, let's just take two of them. First off, Rudolf Steiner, if you study Rudolf Steiner and others who already are speaking to beings that we're talking about here, direct communication with them and bringing messages from the spiritual world to help people, because that's the only communication you will ever have with the spiritual world, is one that brings, as you pointed out, love, harmony, wisdom into your life that you can then share with others. If you can't share it, it's not doing you any good. But let's take, I'm not going to mention the names of these people, but I'm sure you know them. Two of them are psychologists, and they're supposedly the top psychologists in the world, but they have zero warmth in anything they say. One of the 12 senses is warmth. If a person doesn't have warmth in their breath, they don't have Christ in their heart. And then look closer. They might not even have an ego, an I am. And so one of the 12 senses is to recognize another I am. Your I am recognizing another I am.
Egohood, yes.
And that's why he calls them superhuman beings, that they're humans, because you can recognize them with your humanness, your I am, and they will always be filled with warmth. They'll be filled with fire, as a matter of fact. They will definitely enkindle in you the fire of courage that can bring the love to the earth and to everyone around you, yourself included. So we look at Rudolf Steiner, and it's not like these people that I'm describing, who do look like animals. They look like animals, and yet people think they're enlightened. They're not enlightened. They're psychologists. They study rats. They don't study human beings. And here they are telling us pseudo-spiritual things, which I call, well, I stole it from a great Tibetan teacher, Trungpa Rinpoche, spiritual materialism. This is the worst form of spiritual materialism that doesn't teach you how to have anything rhythmical or sacramental in your life that can enhance your etheric body. It doesn't teach you how to become selfless. These are the most selfish, egotistic people you could ever imagine, but they don't have an ego. So who is inside of them? Well, if they're feeding their ego with nothing but their astral body, that's Lucifer. And that's these people I'm talking about are the worst Luciferic deluded people you can possibly find. They think they know everything and they know nothing. And so in your astral body, if you have not conquered it and gotten all the animal desires out, Lucifer is simply going to tempt you. In your in your etheric body, you will actually find Christ as your helper there. And by the way, in your astral body, you'll find, of course, the antidote to Lucifer is the Holy Spirit. The antidote to what eats up your etheric body, this aberrations of sex, violence, psychosis, and neurosis, which is what happens when your guardian angel is not in communication with you. That's all you have to do is turn on the TV. It's like the explication of the worst form of that. And so those are the beings who are eating your I am, which exists in your heart, in your feelings, in your respiration and the circulation of your blood is one place your ego is found. Well, those are Asuric beings trying to steal your ego for the sun demon, Sorat, and Christ is the antidote. But in your physical nature, that is where the Father God, the ground of being, has given us basically insight into the divine manifestation of spirit in the material world. Who do we find there? Since 1840, since materialism, since the worship of superstition science, which is literally the opposite of what they say they are. There's no knowing in science. There's simply data. There's simply information. Who is that? That's Ahriman. And he's incarnated right now in North America, and he's waiting that enough egos can be stolen to go into this spider web that Rudolf Steiner talked about, which is made up of materialistic thoughts, gray shadow thoughts. And when he does, once that system is developed enough, then Ahriman is developing it for who? For the sun demon to incarnate in. And what do we have in modern science? We have Yuval Noah Harari telling us we're supposed to be transhumans, but some of us are going to become, and remember when we had the talk about the different types of Homo sapiens, and he says the new one is Homo Deus, human gods. Well, that's not right. That is the deprecation of the human I am, and it's nothing but selfishness. And so Ahriman has prepared the human body to become the foundation, the seat of a false wisdom, an artificial intelligence that has nothing to do with human advancement. But as in the selections we hear Rudolf Steiner say, sorry, we have to live with that. That's what we're struggling with now. That's the evil we have to face. And why? Because at the same time that that evil is there and we're being taught nothing but that evil, we have the chance to meet the superhuman beings who are there, and also the beings of the sun, as you pointed out. So really the entire hierarchy, Christ and the hierarchy, they're all there. They're ready to help us. They're ready to infuse us with their own divine language so that we can communicate with them and have pure wisdom. But instead, what are we offered? We're offered an internet that says that it's filled with artificial intelligence, which is better than human intelligence or human wisdom, divine wisdom. And eventually, Sorat will wish to incarnate into a machine. Ahriman wishes to incarnate into a machine and live forever as a physical human being, which is, of course, the greatest aberration to the spirit there possibly can be. So we have the Father God redeeming what Ahriman's doing in our physical body. We have Christ redeeming what the Asuras and Soroth are doing in our feelings. And we have the Holy Spirit to redeem what Lucifer is doing in our astral body. All we have to do is accept it.
That's true. And getting back to these men from these planets, I've been working on this for probably 5 years. And how this works when you're thinking about things like this, you are left sometimes with just an unknown in your mind. And if you can hold that unknown, however long it takes, it will reveal itself to you little by little, depending on what you need to know. And I've always thought, even since I was very young, that there was I believe that you see this in your fantasy, you see this in a movie, Superman. When Superman came out, I said, there's something to Superman. Who's Superman? Just look at it. um, it's been telling us through the art forms. And I guess that's another way I'd like to describe today something so important. Also, with the experience of the 12 senses, the art forms, the activity of the art forms, creating an art form that can't be perfected like a machine in a manufacturing plant. As you spoke about once, it always comes out the same thing you make, the same thing comes out, nothing different will come out. But in the art form, the imperfections that material science would like to say, because it can't be replicated, given a barcode and sold and delivered by Amazon, because it's an art form that you're making in real time. It's individual. Everyone knows it. And this is what's so important. People don't recognize that their basic art forms, whether it's painting, dance, music, they have a hard time thinking that if it doesn't become commercial activity and make money, it's not worth anything, especially in our time. There's so many young artists, people that give up or try and they can't make commercial success. So they think, well, there's nothing to that. And yet that's where everything is. Because in that art form, with the balancing of the 12 senses, everything that you'll see in the 12 senses you're doing under any art form, actually under any gesture, any good thing that you did, anyone, you're using these things, and yet they're not given in our time value because we're perpetually being pressed against with credit cards and money and debt and earning, so that when we turn to our human side, we consider it valueless. And this is what the root of what's happening to the youth right now. The selfies, the want to be famous, want to do something, they feel like their value is dressing up. Whatever, it's fun, don't get me wrong, the fun part, but the part that becomes addictive, the part that's striving to become an I am being worth something, is down false paths, being tempted with the phone and with everything else in the wrong way, because by itself it's not evil, it's its application or the not understanding. But this is important because so much of the youth and middle age is falling into alcohol, sex, abuse, all these different things. And we see it, as we talked about earlier with the child. Why? Because the part of ourself we keep trying, not we, but the world is forcing us to try to measure our art against money. How many people have dropped their art forms and said it's not worth it, it's not valuable, it's not, I can't find a monetary exchange. And this is the temptation of Armin, always looking to take everything we do and take all of the qualitative. That's what art is, and turn it into the quantitative. If you're a carpenter, how much do I charge for a job? Take my art form of my handsaw, my coping saw, and my drill, and all these tools and glues, and turn them into an hourly rate. My humanity, my craft is only worth X. This is worth that. And this activity always existed, but more and more, beyond anything, it is Armin seeking to turn the qualitative, our humanity, into numerical value, whether it's fake Bitcoin or whether it's any denomination of gold, silver, digital assets, trying to find a value, and yet the value is false. It's never real. The stock market is never real. It never has the value 1 minute from the next of what it did before. So this is that materialism you're speaking about versus the reality that we could push back on it with spiritual science. We could push back on these concepts and put them in their domain, because what Armin and Lucifer are seeking to do with the Azores is, when they're in their domains, they are benevolent. When they move outside their domains, they're malevolent, and they have pushed themselves, they have trespassed against us. And we individually have to say, no, I'll live again. I'm living now. Today, I'm going to get a cup of coffee. I'm going to go see a friend and buy him a donut, and we're going to sit down and chat. And it's worthless to the stock market, but it's priceless to me. And we need more of that activity, because that really is trying to turn bread into stones. And Armin wants us to turn the bread of life, our life, into stones. And it is one of the temptations of Christ. And when you use your art form, when you do something freely for free, and I don't mean, people like Holy Roller. No, no, just do anything, no matter what the value is. Take an old thing and fix it up and paint it. Add the value of looking at it and paying attention. You're going to use the 12 senses in any activity, whether you recognize them. And that's where experience comes. And this is what the dark forces don't want us to have: experience. They do not want us to experience in this world. They want to drive us into the eighth sphere bit by bit, by first breaking down our value system, our self-worth. The two primary powers in hypnosis are authority and self-esteem. Authority and self-esteem, and that works on us from childhood, and there's nothing in our time to defend and protect children and the rite of passage to becoming mature against this onslaught of turning the bread of our life, the bread of life, the etheric, our life, into stones, transform it into stones, which are a denomination that have no value, and yet we're told that they do.
Wonderful points. Don't know which one to address first. I love what you have said today, and you've said it before. We need to be able to rest with unknowing. In the past, it was called attempting to pierce the cloud of unknowing. And you don't expect anything. You just sit. You just have longing. You have reverence and awe and wonder towards the wisdom that may flow into you because you're empty, because you don't know. Science right now thinks they know everything. And as I pointed out, they know little or nothing. They know less than something because they actually have the wrong view and they're going in the opposite direction. Rudolf Steiner called spiritual science, his anthroposophy, in these lectures we pointed out that we've given you today, mystery science. These are the mysteries, and the quotes, as you pointed out, are so powerful that you would have to meditate on these for many years before you would get the full impact of what is being said here. But let's just take what you pointed out, which is, what do we know? Well, the word science comes from skio, which means to know, K-N-O-W, to know. Well, essentially, Rudolf Steiner says that if you know something, what you can know, the truth, the only truth you can know is one truth, and that's called intuition, and it is equivalent to love. So what you've said is absolutely hitting the nail on the head. It is love that we wait in unknowing for. It is love that will reveal the mystery of true spiritual science, and it is love that will keep firing our longing, keep enkindling our longing for our soul, which we know, thinking, feeling, and willing. We have this soul. It's got different parts. We can understand that. Of course, the scientists would tell us we don't have a soul, especially these psychologists I'm telling you about. They don't think you have a soul. They think that you are a rat, that you're just an animal, and that you're an automaton responding to stimuli instead of, as you said, acting out of sacramentalism, out of ritual, out of spiritual longing for the unknown, because that's who you are. You don't know who you are. Who I am now, I could have never, ever guessed I would turn out to be this way 20 years ago. There's no way. I couldn't have imagined it. When I was a child, there was absolutely no way. No way. And I thought I knew a lot back then, right? I thought I was filled with the wisdom of the Spirit, but no. The Spirit is unlimited, and the ever-present help of the spiritual world that he refers to in these lectures below, that's there. And it goes to the Mother Lodge of the Sun. And from there, Michael and Sophia work with Christ through the archai, through the archangels, through the angels, through your guardian angel, directly into us. And sometimes, like you said, you can have that flash when you have an intuition, when you're reaching up into your higher spiritual self. That's like something out of the future. It's inexplicable. It's so mysterious to particularly, people question me when I was very clairvoyant, literally how I could possibly get answers about their personal life. Well, I didn't. Memory is the gift of Christ, but memory has to be, it's not even in your body. They say it's in your muscles or it's in your brain no, it's not. Your memory is in the actions that you've done that have moral substance that will continue. You won't remember things that aren't moral, but anything moral, Christ will help you remember and is always there to help.
For those listening at home or at work, wherever you happen to be right now, Doug and I, and you're doing it with us, you're a part of what's happening spiritually in our thinking. We're thinking right now, and we're doing this off the cuff. There's no preparedness other than just a topic. But while we do this, everyone that's listening right now is tuning in and is part, wherever you happen to live on the planet. You can hear this and you're participating in time with what we're doing. And so the threefoldness of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. I want to mention this and connect it to the Supermen because this is so important and maybe a stretch, but I doubt it. The Father God, the Father part, what we read and what you've attached here that you put together today on the link is the earth. It's said 3 or 4 or 5 times. They're seeking to have earth existence. Just listen to the words that Steiner gives. Earth existence, which has to do with the Father God. We know that the Son men are coming also, and this is actually occurring during the time of Christ coming in 1909 when Rudolf Steiner first sees him in the etheric realm. There's the first reappearance of Christ descending from the higher realms. So they are within a few years entering in. And so you see Christ and you see the Father God. What you're also seeing, which is Michael is part of this, is the descent of the Holy Spirit. They actually said that in the Bible. Some fire tongues sitting on the heads of the apostles. This is no more than you see in the Catholic. My kids have it with the dove descending and the fire tongues descending. We're seeing the descent of the Holy Spirit, pure and simple. How it gets translated into knowledge and mystery knowledge in details is an elaboration we can talk about. But how it's put into pictorial form and how it's visually seen, Christ is descending with the Holy Spirit to the earth, where Rudolf Steiner speaks about these men are coming here to descend to the earth. And it's all about language. Everything the Holy Spirit does, everyone understood each other. What is anthroposophy? What are they bringing? They're bringing things that have to do with language, with a new language. And they're bringing it 12-fold. It's all here wrapped up in your old religions. It's actually wrapped up in real time. And if you think about what I just said and look at what Doug attached, just take a phrase and look at one sentence. In it is loaded pieces of this. So the hard thing for people listening, oh my God, these guys are all over the page talking about so much stuff. How does it coalesce? How does it go together? It goes together in an image. One of the 12 senses is sight. It'll go together in something you hear. Listen to Rudolf Steiner's lectures. You'll hear something different than you'll read with your eyes. It has something different to do with your balance, with the temperature. Every part of the 12 senses, again, I use this as a new template here, actually activates an aspect of this. And so through the descent of the Holy Spirit, everyone through the different nations and the different tongues will hear this in their own way. This is the enemy of our men. He must have his logic and his one language and one words that he wants to redefine right now, because he's stripping away everything from Noah Webster, who was born about a mile from me here. He's stripping away everything from the English language and making his own new language. He started redefining reality through word versus this language we're speaking about with this anthroposophy that they're bringing us, because it is in the language, it is in the understanding that there's actually not just consciousness. This is so important. The Spirit gave me this to say a few minutes ago. The earth and all of us, as in the Bible, are being transformed. We're not going to look like this form, which we actually don't in the astral plane anyway. The earth will not look this way. Our bodies will not look this way. This is the moment and the time we live in. So don't try to hold on to Jesus and all of us, doing our thing and on the moon in Jerusalem. We will look nothing like this. And that is also scary to a science that's looking to say we have reached its limits, because you don't see, the chart from the ape to the man. You don't see anything else, but there are more metamorphoses, Goethe, metamorphoses that are going to occur to mankind and the environment and the earth and the realms that he lives in. And if you're a swamp creature, there will be a swamp for you. So it doesn't stop. Again, that's very scary because you'd be frightened if you even believed it, which is why they can't, that we would. And this is where the faith that comes in. And I always bring myself back to my childhood when my clothes didn't fit. I was like 6 years old and I'm growing out of them. And I'm looking in the mirror and I'm looking different. I'm like, Mom, when am I going to stop growing? Who's doing this? Who's in control? You had to have that faith of a child to have that same faith that there are powers and hierarchies, and they are not, at least the good ones, are not trying to kill you. They say there's aliens. Well, we know one thing. They're not trying to kill us, or they could have already, moving at the speed of light and taking a left turn at the speed of light. So there are these things. Call them what you will, God, Jehovah, Muhammad. It doesn't really matter at some point. What's so important for everybody to recognize that there is hierarchy and there is divine intelligence that actually enters our sphere and enters us through the 12 senses all day long. We just are, we're just not in the car driving. We're not part of it. We can't handle it yet to understand it. And the more you do understand, the more you will have to simplify, like Doug and I are doing, bringing it right down to earth existence and simplifying it so that everyone can understand. Because if it becomes so complex, like high calculus that no one could understand, it's not worth it. God brings everything down like Jesus: simple: bread, wine, food, kiss, touch, help. It's always with God going to be real and be human.
And on the earth, as you said, not luciferically up in the sky, not ahrimanically underneath the earth, not the demon on the sun who wants to steal your ego. The mystery of the earth, as we've talked about before, there's 7 great mysteries. The mystery of the earth is the mysteries of birth and death. What's before birth and what's after death? Most materialists are scared to death. They are so frightened because they don't believe there's anything in the unseen world. If it's unseen, then it doesn't exist, because they can only use their materialistic 5 senses, as you also pointed out. So really, it's the fear that we have to overcome. But if there's love, there's no fear. And where there's fear, there's no love, is the old saying.
Well, also, Doug, one more thing. Those 5 senses are actually spiritual. When you're seeing, what are you seeing? Through what eyes? When you're hearing, what are you hearing? Like Jesus says, when you're touching, when you're tasting, those are not just physical senses. Those are senses that work on our spiritual part too. We just kind of gave them a name and said that we've limited them in our science. But those 5 senses also are more spiritual than anything. The sense of touch. You kiss your wife on the cheek or on the lips, and that sense of touch, the love comes right through. It's more than just flesh. It's transference. And really, isn't that what we're talking about? These men from higher planets are here to transfer touch, and we know that through Jesus and Thomas. And we won't go into that today, but that was not physical, material flesh that he was feeling. There are more things that are happening through the 5 senses than just material matter. They've hijacked the 5 senses and conned us and convinced us, and they've pushed the other 7 out like they don't matter.
They only allow you one eye, not both. They don't allow you color. You're colorblind. You only get to use one ear, and it's halfway clogged. The speech, we don't even know what the creative word, what the logos is. We don't understand that every single religion says that a female being spoke creation into existence, or with us, it's Christ spoke it into existence with God. So I like these 2 memes that I'd seen recently. One of them said, God is dead, Nietzsche. Nietzsche's dead, God. And the other one, I really,
that's great.
Because we have the right to say, God, you don't exist. But that also makes us extremely fearful because we don't know that there's something before birth and something after death. Or the other one I really like is, atheism is dead because Satan showed up. Because as soon as Satan shows up, there's a God.
Well, that's the problem with Satan. Well, not Lucifer. Lucifer's the prideful one, but Armin is the one who doesn't want you to even know he's in the town. He don't want you to know he's around. He works best in the dark. Lucifer is like, look at me, I'm proud, I'm proud. A lot like Trump. He's so Luciferic. Me, I did it. It's public relations, you know?
Absolutely. It's the me generation. Everyone would have to agree with that. It's the me generation in the West. And unfortunately, that is what takes us down into animalism, because unless you can cooperate with others, then you're not really a human. There's no such thing as just love. It's love between people. Wherever two or more are gathered in my name, there I am.
And we got 7 seconds before we make this under 60 minutes. So thank you for having me on. Tyler, shut that thing off. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Doug, I love being with you today. Adios.